Welcome to the 2020 Brooklyn Human Trafficking Task Force Community Awareness Event. My name is David Weiss, and I'm the Deputy Unit Chief of the Human Trafficking Unit here at the DA's office. On behalf of the Trafficking Task Force, I want to welcome you and thank you all for taking time out of your busy lives to come and spend it with us. Human trafficking is a continuing and devastating crime. There remains many misconceptions about what it is and what it is not. Therefore, we have events like these to raise awareness and educate the public about the issue. And the theme of tonight's program focuses on is closer than you think, and the realities of sex and labor trafficking on a local level that affects our communities. I first want to thank the dedicated members of the Human Trafficking Unit working in the DA's office, as well as the detective investigators that work on this case, as well as the police department vice unit that work diligently on behalf of the survivors of sex trafficking. It's challenging work, and I want to acknowledge all the team members that do this work day in and day out. So thank you. As prosecutors, we are on the front lines seeing firsthand what this issue is about and the devastation that it brings. And that's why I'm proud to stand behind the district attorney who has prioritized investigating and prosecuting human trafficking cases. District Attorney Gonzalez is a dedicated reformer who has demonstrated an enduring commitment to enhancing the effectiveness of the office while protecting our victims. He has supported our Human Trafficking Unit with all the resources of his office, with his time and with his attention. Indeed, that is why he is even here tonight. It gives me great pleasure to introduce District Attorney Gonzalez to open the event.
Good evening, everyone. It's good to be here to talk about all the work that all of us do together to protect vulnerable populations and to figure out how we can prevent the scourge of human trafficking from continuing to wreck lives of so many of our young people in particular. I want to take a moment to acknowledge and thank the dancers and Ms. Dawson and our choreographer. And in addition, the artists that were displayed downstairs, I want to thank all of them for their time, showing their artwork and being supportive of what we're trying to accomplish together. Today's topic, human trafficking, it's closer than you think, is unfortunately too real for too many people. And many parents, many people in the outside world only think that human trafficking is something that happens to other people. They don't realize that this touches the lives of many people who are not trafficked from foreign countries and brought here necessarily for human trafficking or for sex trafficking, although obviously it happens in that context as well. But 90%, a full 90% of the cases investigated by the Brooklyn DA's office and prosecuted by our office are people who are trafficked close to home. And so this is a very timely topic that we have to continue to shine light on, that we have to continue to demand that resources are appropriately put into this area to make sure that we prevent this. And listen, we're doing this together with Safe Horizons, so I want to thank Safe Horizons. The CEO is here, Ariel Zwang. Together we co-founded the Brooklyn Human Trafficking Task Force many years ago. Safe Horizon provides comprehensive, compassionate, and evidence-based services to survivors of human trafficking. They do incredible work. We could not be a true partner in this task force without all of their support and all their guidance and expertise. So I really want to say thank you to Safe Horizons for doing this. I'm also grateful to the panelists who have agreed to share their expertise, and some of them share their personal narratives, their experiences. I'm not sure if there are any judges in the room. If they are, we thank you for coming, because often these cases wind up in front of you. Not just the offenders, but women who are before you victims and survivors of human trafficking, and it's important that our judiciary understands what this looks like and how people can find themselves in a situation. So I want to thank that. I want to thank also the staff from my office. We have the fine DA's office. My Special Victims Bureau is led by ADA Ms. Gregory. Our Domestic Violence Bureau by Michelle Kaminsky. David Weiss, who is our chief of the human trafficking work. And obviously Laura Frey, who's our coordinator with the Brooklyn Human Trafficking Task Force. So thank all of you for doing this work. I'd also like to thank Melinda, if you're here, Melinda's here, who organizes a public engagement from our office. Thank you for putting together another meaningful presentation. And finally, the Borough President, Eric Adams, thank you for allowing us to use this beautiful room. It's clear that my obligation as your district attorney is to prevent people from being victims of crime and trying to prevent crimes from happening in the first place. And together we're going to do that. We're going to do it in ways that promote public trust in our justice system. Human trafficking is an area that for too long, I believe, had been under-resourced. And so in my office, we're making sure that we're putting the resources into our human trafficking. The office has investigated last year about 90 cases of human trafficking in Brooklyn, and we've indicted a number of people. We've had 13 convictions just in the past year of human trafficking, some of them very horrific cases. So we are committed to holding perpetrators accountable, but it goes so much beyond that. It goes about making sure that survivors of human trafficking, that their trauma, their needs are dealt with, that we're putting them back on a path of self-dignity and human dignity. And so this work is about prosecuting bad people. It's also about promoting and redirecting people to a path that they are meant to live. They are not meant to be trafficked. And we have to be strategic about how we do this work. In my office, we talk about the 3 P's of enforcement, and that is prosecution, it's going to be prevention, and it's going to be protection. And so the prevention starts with education. We all know that. There's a lot of misconceptions about how human trafficking starts and who's a victim of human trafficking. This is why Closer Than You Think is so important, so we can have that conversation, and so that the media can cover this, and so that people know how to access resources. And we know that anyone can find themselves a victim of human trafficking. It impacts every neighborhood, every ethnic and racial group, and even every economic things. There are reasons that this happens to people that may seem mind-boggling to people who are unfamiliar with the way traffickers prey upon people. And so often, our youngest residents are the people most susceptible. There's a reason that they find themselves moving out the house. Maybe they begin trading sex for companionship, and for rent, and for housing. And they may actually believe that the person that they're involved is actually has some real romantic interest in them. But before they realize it, they're being forced to do things that they never wanted to do, that they don't know how to get out of it. And we have to make sure that before those relationships turn exploitative, that there are resources in our communities, whether it be supportive housing, whether it be other kind of resources right here in Brooklyn, that we can have these women, mostly women, turn to and get the services they need to get out of these relationships as quickly as possible. And in the labor context, we know that a lot of these jobs seem legitimate at first, and then they turn into something that they're not. But this boyfriend complex has become a real issue. Women often don't want to testify against their traffickers in the beginning because they think that the person actually really cares about them. So we have to make sure that we have people who have lived experiences as resources to them, to talk to them to make sure that we can provide the right services. And I'm very proud to say that in the DA's office, people with lived experiences, shared experiences, are the type of people that we want to help use as service providers and as people on staff, so that we can actually figure out how to best talk to and work with our survivors of these crimes. In terms of prosecution, I already told you, this office will stand very firmly against anyone who dares to hurt and exploit another person, especially in this sex trafficking context. The office has prosecuted a number of cases recently, and you'll often hear that there's a number of years in prison as part of that plea bargain or trial. We work as part of the co-chairs of the Brooklyn Human Trafficking Force. We have 35 federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies. Some are here today, NYPD being a major partner. Thank you to the New York City Police Department, and obviously our service providers. So we share information, we conduct investigations, and we prosecute. We will continue to do that. But as we go on to do this work, we can never underestimate the psychological trauma and the sort of exploitive mechanisms that people are able to hold over a lot of our survivors. And this is a part where I think the DA's office plays a special role. In some places, if a survivor of domestic violence or sex trafficking doesn't want to prosecute, the DA just sends them away. Here, dealing with the person dealing with the trauma is always going to be a priority of this office. We're going to continue to work with survivors of these crimes, whether they want to prosecute or not, and maybe they don't want to prosecute in the beginning, but maybe later on they want to prosecute. But we're going to continue to offer resources and services and help people get out of bad situations. As the DA, my priority is obviously to protect people, and this is where the third P is, right? This is part of the protection. We will never turn away a survivor, because at that moment in time, their number one priority is not prosecution, but dealing with their own self. And so for that, I'm grateful to the service providers that work in this, the family, Sanctuary for Families and other organizations that we work with, but including our own Victim Services Unit, our Family Justice Center in Brooklyn, that does a lot of this work. That is the key to anyone who you think might be trafficked, is to let them know that they can come to the DA's office regardless of where their head is in terms of prosecution. We're going to get help and get services, and then we'll deal with the prosecution. So, more than that, I just want to say it's all of our obligations to, if you see something, to say something, to report it. You have to work together to protect people. And sometimes people are afraid to report because they think the person is going to get angry at them. We work to provide services to individuals who need services. And while we will often also try to prosecute the offender, we also understand that we need all of you to step forward and help report these situations. So I want to thank everyone. I have a couple of citations today. We're here today working with Safe Horizon, but there's also Not On My Watch that provides services to survivors, and they're a tremendous advocate on changing the laws to make sure that these laws are more effective. And we had a change last year in the law that has allowed this DA's office to prosecute additional cases. We'll talk more, I'm sure we'll talk more about that as this day goes, but by allowing us to prosecute cases without having to show the same level of exploitation and force that we had to do before, that is a big factor. And we had a case just recently that David was overseeing last year with this really abusive pimp, for no other word, trafficker, was trafficking a 16-year-old girl. With the change in the law, we were able to move forward on that. So thank you for the organizations that also work on advocacy, because we need more of that. My first award is going to go to Gabrielle Greco. She's the Director of Human Resources for Not On My Watch. And this is in recognition of your dedication, extraordinary energy, which I've witnessed now, and compassion in the fight to end human trafficking and exploitation. With deep appreciation for your participation in today's event, signed by me as Brooklyn District Attorney, and it's given in connection with Safe Horizons anti-trafficking. So, Ariel, please come up also. And we have another citation to Miss Smith, Beverly Smith. Inside joke. Listen, Beverly is a leader in using her voice and her experiences with Safe Horizon, leading survivor-led anti-trafficking initiatives. She provides direct services to survivors, and she trains them to advocate for themselves and to educate and to organize in the fight against trafficking. And I'm honored to have met Ms. Smith and to present this award on behalf of the District Attorney and Safe Horizon in recognition of your dedication and compassion to the fight to end human trafficking and exploitation. Smith.